This is the new 4th generation Nissan X-Trail and it gets to Australia later this year. It is big news. Now, key revisions to this car, you can see some styling changes, which I'll get into. They've also done mechanical changes to the engine that we're familiar with. They've dropped the manual option, but we've gained a hybrid. Safety takes a big step up in this new generation, as does technology inside and infotainment. But all of that does not come for free. The new X-Trail has gone north in prices, and I'll detail that shortly. Now, what is it up against? Well, it's a medium SUV, so for starters, that is the most hotly contested market segment in Australia. We're talking Toyota RAV4 and CX-5 are probably the stalwarts of that category, but also newer, fresher cars like our Drive Car of the Year winning Kia Sportage and the Hyundai Tucson and Mitsubishi Outlander. In fact, there are more than 20 vehicles for Australians to choose from. So if it is going to stand out, it needs to be very good. Is it? We're going to find out. But before we do that, don't forget to subscribe to Drive's YouTube channel so that when Drive drives new cars, you hear about it first. Now, as I said, this is the 4th generation of an Australian favourite, and it has some sharp new threads to win back the buyers. The family resemblance to the old model is definitely still there, but so is a more modern, edgier visage headline by these double-decker LED headlights. Subtle but impactful styling tweaks include a larger grille, the addition of functional air intakes at the front of the car, and squared-off edges replacing the previous generation's more curved clothes. Under the bonnet of some X-Trails sits the same 2.5 litre petrol engine and CVT transmission. Carries over from the previous generation, but it has had some power and torque increases and efficiency gains. Those models hit Australian showrooms in November. The one we're looking at today doesn't get to Australia until February or March next year. It is the first hybrid from Nissan in the X-Trail, and that's why Nissan's come up with a bunch of new superhero-inspired marketing call signs like ePower and eForce, which I'll tell you about in a sec. Now, this hybrid version that we're sitting in here, in Australia it will be the flagship of the X-Trail range, which is a bit of a different approach to what Toyota chose to do with the RAV4, where you can get a hybrid in almost every specification. In Australia, there will be 4 different X-Trails to choose from. It'll start with the ST from $36,750. Above that will be the STL, then there'll be a TI and the flagship TIL. Now, those last two, the TI and the TIL, will also be available with this hybrid powertrain, which Nissan calls ePower. That'll cost an extra $4,200. I should also mention that the 2 base models, the ST and the STL, will also be available in 5-seat and 7-seat specification. Now, the external footprint of this new X-Trail hasn't changed much. For the record, it's 15mm taller, 20mm wider, and it's actually 10mm shorter front to back, but the wheelbase is the same. So you'd be forgiven for thinking that the interior space hasn't changed much, which could be an issue, because as our August 2022 SUV mega test found out, the X-Trail is among the smaller end of the medium SUV range when it comes to interior space. But I'll check out the back seats and the boot shortly. As for the front, well, straight away I can see this is a huge step up on the old X-Trail. Not hard to imagine that car was getting on in age. The interior looks a lot classier. I mean, elements like this floating console, the leather across here. I should say, by the way, we are in a European Tecna spec, which aligns to TIL. So this is a $50,000 plus car. But it presents really nicely. We've also got 2 12.3-inch digital screens, one for the multimedia and one for the driver instrument binnacle. What else have we got here? Oh, of course, the important questions, right? Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Apple CarPlay is wireless, but if you're an Android fan, it's wired. You do also have a wireless charging mat down here. Other features, digital radio, satellite navigation, smartphone mirroring, as I mentioned, a couple of USB ports, always important. We've got dual zone climate control here to keep you comfortable. This top spec has a 3rd zone in the back for tri-zone, and that will be on Australian specifications. full leather, as you'd expect, electrically adjustable. In fact, the driving position, thanks to this multi-adjustable leather steering wheel, is actually pretty good. No complaints there. And no complaints on headroom below what is a panoramic sunroof. Very impressive. Big cup holders, they're important for modern life, and a couple of bottle holders in the door. And this split opening armrest storage locker reminds me a lot of BMW's approach in the olden days. In fact, I can't remember if they still do it. Regardless, it's very easy to use and it's very deep inside too. Enough about the front seats, why don't we jump in the back and check out that space issue. First thing I've noticed in the back is just how wide those doors open, wider than before, and they've cut a lot of the bulk out of the door so it's actually easier to get in and out. Once you're in, how's this? Look at all that knee room I've got. I've got good under-seat foot room. For the record, that's my driving position. Headroom is great. Not as generous as the front seat, but certainly no complaints in getting my bouffant here under the roofline. The seats are very comfortable. They're probably a touch flatter than I would like. There's not as much scalloping on the leather to hold you in place, but we'll see how that goes. This is not a sports car after all. So we get these privacy blinds, but that view's pretty good, so I'll let you keep looking out there. We've also got, as I said, the third climate control zone down here, controls for heated seats as well. So the outboard seats get heaters, nice and cozy. And of course the obligatory USB ports. In terms of drinks holders, you've got bottle holders in both doors, and there is an armrest here with a couple of cup holders in it, and also a slot for your mobile phone. It's actually quite a high armrest, but I'm liking it. It feels quite luxurious. Now in Australia, from STL up, the second row of seats can actually slide forward quite a bit. Now this car I've got here is a 7-seater, so that's actually going to help me getting into the third row, but how much room is there really? Let's find out. Okay, now I'm doing this from the driver's side, but obviously in any country you do it from the curb side. Doesn't matter, Nissan makes it easy to get in on either side with the 60/40 split fold that also slides. One little lever back here, folds that forward, slides, and then big bloke like me's got to shoehorn himself in. Okay, pull it. Oh, I'm not going to pull that back for a sec. My feet are caught. Hang on. Headroom, not great. Under seat foot room, not great. Leg room, well, if the second row wants any comfort, I'm not going to have any whatsoever. Nissan doesn't pretend that this is a full-size 7-seater, so this is a kids-only zone. And I reckon kids would probably be fine as long as they're under about 12 or 13. They've also got these little porthole windows to look out, so it doesn't feel extremely claustrophobic, but it doesn't feel as airy as the second row. I guess that's why this third row is just an occasional third row. Good to have, but how often would you use it? Probably not much. Now in Australia, the TI grade gets an electric opening tailgate. The TIL gets a hands-free. Hey, it worked! First time for everything, huh? All right, 7-seater, but we can fold those out of the way, which gives you between 565 and 585 litres of space, which is very competitive. Now, if you have bought the hybrid, you've got 10 litres less, and you also don't get a spare tyre of any kind underneath there, because the battery, not the hybrid battery, but the starter battery, has to go there instead. All right, that is enough of the static inspection. I want to drive. Let's go. Now, before we get to how this new Nissan X-Trail drives, I feel like it's worth calling out Nissan's exemplary effort on standard safety specification in this car. I mean, we're talking blind spot monitoring and active assist, rear cross traffic alert and active assist. It's got the full AEB suite. In fact, it has pretty much everything that current class leaders, the Kia Sportage and the Hyundai Tucson have. So from that point of view, even if you're buying the base model, you're getting a very impressive suite of safety features. Now, no word yet on whether this car will be a 5-star performer in terms of ANCAP and Euro NCAP crash testing. I'd be shocked if it wasn't, but we can't say that for sure. But regardless, you can rest assured that what you are buying in this car has all the safety equipment that buyers have a right to expect. In fact, the only thing that buyers of the ST base model miss out on is the surround view monitor, front parking sensors, and a tyre pressure monitoring system. And really, those things are nice to have, and you would not complain if you had them. But I think the other inclusions are equally as important, if not more important. Now, time to drive, and let's get back to our superheroes. You remember I mentioned ePower and eForce? ePower is basically Nissan's catchy name for the hybrid powertrain in this vehicle. Now, where other hybrid powertrains in the medium SUV class run in parallel, which means they can be driven on the petrol engine or on a combination of the petrol engine and electric motors, or just on the electric motors as the situation demands, this car runs its hybrid system in series. The petrol engine's job is not to drive the wheels. The only thing it does is send power through an inverter to be stored in a battery or sent straight out to the electric motors. So only the electric motors are driving the wheels. Up front, 150 kilowatt motor, down the back, 100 kilowatt motor. The reason you've got a bigger one at the front, Nissan says, is purely down to packaging. Gives you a combined system output of 157 kilowatts, which is around about on the money for a medium SUV. How that translates into the real world is that you get 0 to 100 in 7.0 seconds if you're at the stoplight Grand Prix. In everyday driving, this car has more than enough power to do what you need to do. It's also worth bearing in mind, this car weighs a not inconsiderable 1,911 kilos. That's some 235 kilos more than the non-hybrid version. So the fact that it has this performance and a claimed fuel efficiency of 6.1 litres per 100, that's pretty decent. That's not as good as what Toyota claims from its RAV4 hybrid. I think their claim is 4.8, and in regular testing, we've seen low fives easily, high fives if you get a bit generous with the throttle. So 6.1, I guess it remains to be seen how close this car can get to its claim. In my short driving so far, we're averaging around 7 litres per 100, but this is on a flowing road, so we're not really getting a chance for the regen to do its thing. I'd like to test it more in traffic and in the city, and just to see if it can bring that number down. But as for how it performs, it is actually a very quiet car. You can probably hear a bit of the roar from the tyres on this coarse chip bitumen. It is quite a coarse road that I'm on right now, but I cannot hear any petrol engine. I can't hear the whine from any electric motors. It is really quite a refined cabin. And the ride quality on this road, I'll be honest, this is Slovenia, stunning country. Road surfaces are ordinary. I think Australia probably has the wood on Slovenia when it comes to smooth roads, and that's saying something. But the X-Trail's doing a fantastic job of just gliding over the top of most of it. Nissan doesn't quote any numbers for how long you can drive on electricity alone, but you do have a button down here marked EV, which means you can put it into pure EV mode. There's also an E-pedal button down here, which is your classic one-pedal driving with a catch. It will not bring you to a complete stop like it does on other cars, including other cars in the Nissan range, like the Nissan Leaf. Apparently the Nissan Leaf is to blame, because Nissan says customer feedback was that the Nissan Leaf's e-pedal mode was too jerky, particularly around low-speed manoeuvres and parking, and customers didn't like it. A couple more things I want to cover before this road test comes to an end. Now, you'll remember back at the start I said that Nissan has really lifted the technology game on this car. And apart from the hybrid, obviously, that's a really obvious one, there are two other inclusions that I really like. First off, this car has head-up display. There is no reason why you would ever refuse a car with head-up display. It puts important driving information in your line of sight. It's a boon in any car. And the second thing, which could come in handy if you've got a few people in the back seat or if you've got luggage crowding the back seat, the mirror is a mirror, but it's also a monitor hooked up to a camera in the back, which means if you've got someone sitting in the middle seat in the back blocking your view, you can press the button up here and it gives you a straight through view from that camera in the back. All good usable technology and all very worthwhile having on a car that wants to be one of the best sellers in the medium SUV class. How's this location, huh? Good old Slovenia. Now that's the end of our first drive, our first taste of the 4th generation Nissan X-Trail. And I've got to say, I am really impressed. As a package, it has a lot to like, not least being how it's really elevated safety to the fore. It's a really nice car to drive too. The ePower powertrain is convincing. I'm running now on the low 7 litres per 100 kilometres, which is not quite RAV4 efficiency, but I haven't been driving it like normal. I've been really enjoying the car and testing the car. I think the ePower's biggest challenge in Australia will be its price. At $54,000 in TI spec, that's going to be 58 grand on road. TIL will be over $60,000 on road. I think they're a great headline act, but they're not going to be volume players. At the volume end of the market, the ST and the STL, well, Australians are going to find a lot to like in the new X-Trail. Well, that's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please hit the like button, and don't forget, don't leave without subscribing so that when Drive drives new cars, you hear about it first.